It moves 2.5% of all the world's cargo. More than 13,000 vessels ply its waters every year. The waterway, built at the turn of the 20th century, revolutionized global commerce, making goods cheaper, more readily available. It made the world smaller. Today, the Panama Canal is crucial to global economic stability. So many goods wind their way between the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans, it was expanded in 2016 to accommodate 3 times as many ships as it previously handled. But drought and higher temperatures brought about by global warming are threatening the viability of the canal. Stephen Patton is with the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute in Panama City.
We've got a lot of data that very well matches the predictions of climate change. For example, air temperatures have been increasing in the last 30 years by about 1 degree Celsius. Water temperatures in the Caribbean have increased by about 1 degree Celsius.
He says the evidence is irrefutable.
So what are the numbers for the Panama Canal? In the last 25 years, we've had the 2 driest years on record. We've had the 3 contiguous driest years on record. We've also had, at the same time, 8 of the 10 greatest storms on record. So in this last 25 years, we've had these extremely exceptional wet and dry years compared to 140 years of data. And this is exactly one of the predictions of climate change, extreme weather events. So I would say yes, what we're seeing is completely consistent with climate change predictions. We are getting definitely into a scenario of extreme precipitation events.
Those extreme events directly affect the canal. In the beginning of 2020, water levels at Gatun Lake, part of the canal, were short of the required levels to operate ships without restrictions. Limits had to be put on the amount of cargo that ships could carry. John Langman is in charge of water management for the Panama Canal Administration. He says this happens in spite of the fact that Panama is one of the rainiest regions in the world.
On an average year, we are perfectly okay. We have no problems with meeting all the needs for the canal. On an irregular year, we can face situations in which we have to place some draft restrictions for the ship to come by. So we basically have to manage the canal, and we have done that in the past in order to provide a good quality service. But we have also faced situations like in 2019, in which we faced a significant drought. We have to place draft restrictions that were beyond the ones that we usually would provide to our clients.
Those restrictions cost money and require planning and good communication between the canal and ship operators. Low water levels can lead to costly delays in moving cargo through the waterway.
So anytime that the canal, Gatun Lake, lowers from 85 feet, we need to place some restrictions to the draft that we can offer. And so we have to let them know ahead of time so that the ships are properly loaded. They don't have to unload cargo when they arrive in Panama if they are beyond the draft.
Being at the southern tip of the Central American Isthmus, Panama is in one of the regions that are most at risk of suffering the catastrophic effects of global warming. Erratic tropical weather patterns combined with deforestation to create water problems. That vulnerability has led to the rise of many citizen action groups aimed at protecting the environment. George Hannelly runs the National Association for the Conservation of Nature. It is known as ANCON in Panama.
So Panama has a water problem which is resulting from uses of territories that lead to deforestation in areas where you need to maintain forests so that the hydrological system functions properly. For example, if you are working in an area where the headwaters of the rivers become deforested, that will impact the quality and quantity of water available within that entire watershed. Because the sponge effect of having forest in headwaters is lost when you deforest.
Too much human activity near the watershed degrades the quality of the land, diminishing its capacity to retain rainwater.
The canal is working with poor landowners to reforest land and to plant different crops that are sustainable, like, for example, shade coffee. But at the same time, when you look at the whole watershed, there are large areas that are being deforested every year. So it's not easy to assume that you can compensate the deforestation with reforestation projects, and the timing of the timing of the different effects also is tricky, in the sense that if you take down a forest that may be 300 or 500 years old and you plant a new one today, how long is that new forest going to take to be able to provide the ecosystem services that you were obtaining from the 300 or 500-year-old forest?
That sense of urgency is shared by the Panama Canal administration. After a multi-billion-dollar, multi-year-long effort to widen the canal to expand its capacity, it now faces one of the biggest threats to its viability: the forces of nature unleashed by climate change. Karina Vergara is in charge of water management at the Canal Administration.
So it's important that we include the study of the future scenarios in order to have a better planning and management of the watershed. In this line, we have to provide the water not only for the Panama Canal operation, if not for the 50% of the population of all the country. So during the dry season, we need to manage the levels, and we have to implement some measures that allow us to first provide the water to the population and then operate the canal.
Administrators and activists agree that any solution must involve all key players, including communities that have traditionally lived off of their proximity to the waterway.
It's complicated, but I think that is also a task that we have to implement in a progress manner with the people, with the stakeholders. So we need to take care of the vegetation coverage, that is almost the 50% of the land of the watershed. And we need to work also with the rural communities in the area. They have to produce the agriculture and the cattle, for example, and they need to provide their own incomes. So we need to work with them, with the local authorities, with the ministers that have responsibilities of the agriculture sector or the other economic areas. It's, I can say that's complicated, but we have a team that have specialties in the nature areas, in the social aspect.
Protecting land is crucial to protecting water supplies, which are crucial not only to the Panama Canal, but to the population itself.
The single greatest thing that the Panama Canal Authority needs to do, and they know it very well, and the same is true for the country of Panama, which knows it very well, is to protect the forests. The Smithsonian and the Panama Canal Authority have been working on a project called Agua Salud for a number of years. And the goal of that project was to try to test the theory that forests are better than pastures for holding on to water. It's called the sponge effect. And the idea is that during the rainy season, when the rains fall, we've got more water than we need, the forests act as a big sponge, and so they're absorbing more water in the ground, in the root system, than the grasses would. And then we come to dry season, that water that's been absorbed gets released. And this project has actually shown that forests are much better at holding onto that water when it's much less valuable, and releasing it during the dry season, which is an incredibly valuable resource.
Activists agree.
The most important thing to do is to eliminate the deforestation completely and improve the efficiency of restoration and reforestation projects in the specific locations where they are needed. As I was saying, you need to do watershed analysis. Biodiversity is another important aspect that we should be working on. So there are also analysis that you can do to ensure that you're making efforts in the most effective ways for biological corridors and other aspects that are important for biodiversity, like ensuring the conservation and restoration of ecosystems that have unique flora and fauna, endemic flora and fauna, which we have a lot of different examples of endemic flora and fauna in Panama.
The Canal Authority says it is working with local communities.
So we now are planning, looking into the future, considering the main elements of the climate, the temperature and the precipitation. So we are elaborating a wide range of measures to implement in the territory, working with the vegetation coverage, working with the people, working with the other authorities, and coordinate with the main stakeholder in the area.
Scientists say something has to be done because no matter what, at least some effects of climate change are here to stay.
Even if we manage to stop producing greenhouse gases, sea level rise is going to continue probably for the next centuries. Only a question of how quickly it's going to rise, but it's going to keep rising because that CO2 that we've got in the atmosphere is going to be there, glaciers are going to melt.
Rising sea levels will affect countries like Panama as a whole, while ironically it will be a lack of water that will affect key commercial assets such as the canal unless actions taken now are decisive.